Cool. Hello. Welcome. Thanks for coming. My name is Jess. I'll be doing the talk today on Deities of the Waters. I've got a presentation that I'm going to share. I'm also going to be reading a script because if I don't, this is just going to be a bungled mess. So I won't really be able to keep up with comments as we go. So still feel free to leave comments and I will take a look at them at the end and answer any questions that you've got. So we'll jump into it because when I've rehearsed this, it takes anywhere between 30 minutes and 50 minutes, depending on how quickly I talk, which is usually quite quickly. So I will attempt to present and let's see if I can get this right. Yep, screen share. Allow. Cool. Hopefully you can all see that. Ah, there we go. That's good. Okay, so I will be kind of zipping backwards and forwards. So yeah, just bear with me. So as I said, this talk is on deities of the waters. The element of water has long been revered throughout the ancient and modern world. In ancient Mesopotamian culture, the world and the gods themselves were born from the waters. In Roman culture, the Neptunalia festival was an important celebration which took place every year to pray to Neptune for rain during the summer months. Throughout history, the open seas allowed for trade to flourish, and due to these waters' importance, there are a wealth of different deities associated with them. From seas to rivers to wells and springs, for the tradesmen and fishermen, there is a deity that represents pretty much every aspect. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, as I said, depending on how quickly I talk, we'll look at deities associated with various states of water, why you might want to work with them, and also some practical exercises for you to try and see if you can connect with any of these deities yourself. So whilst they all have the association of water as a common theme, they also have a wealth of other qualities and associations. So you can work with them to aid you in so much more than just connecting with and honoring the element of water. There are many reasons why you might choose to work with a deity. I personally believe that there is a universal energy and that deities are different representations of that energy. Working with a deity can provide a focus to help you connect to this universal energy and empower our workings. And this focus can be especially useful when you want to hone in on a very specific attribute or you have one particular need. For example, if you need strength, you might choose to work with a male god who embodies strength, or a sun god, for example. And in this sense, they can be seen as role models or figures whose attributes we want to embody in our own selves. They can bring comfort, confidence, abundance, and pretty much anything else we can think of. For some, they are more interested in deities from a more psychological sense. So, for example, there's the belief that there's the 7 archetypes which make up all of human consciousness, and that the deities are just embodiments of these archetypes. Finally, learning about deities is fun. With so much historical evidence and information out there, there is a lot to learn, and it opens up a fascinating insight into the past, and it can help us connect with our own history and ancestors. On the flip side, so much has been lost to time that we will never know everything there is to know about the deities of the ancient world, and the mystery is half of the fun. And getting to know deities on your own terms is a rewarding experience, which can help us not just spiritually, but physically and mentally too. So, in this talk, we will be looking at 6 specific deities. So 2 associated with the sea, 2 associated with rivers, and 2 associated with springs and wells. I want to also talk a little bit about UPG. So it may be a term that you've kind of heard bandied about before, but UPG stands for unsubstantiated personal gnosis. When researching deities and just research in general, it can be difficult to tell what is fact and what is the writer's own personal experience. This can often lead to mischaracterization or misrepresentation of deities, or leaving the reader wondering what is true and what is based on an individual's experience. As such, many writers have started using the term UPG when writing about their experience to help readers differentiate from information which has been historically verified and information which is based on personal experience. So UPG is absolutely valid. These are very real experiences that people have had working with deities. However, the distinction is important. Some people like myself enjoy researching the historical factual elements, ancient inscriptions, depictions, etc., and using this to get a base understanding of a deity before working with them. So being able to recognize what is that verified historical fact is quite important to me. However, reading other people's UPG can help us gain a deeper insight into the deity on a personal level and help us understand if we would want to work with them. With everyone's experience and relationship with deities being unique to oneself, it's likely that we won't have the same experience as another. And this doesn't mean that your way of working or how you experience it is wrong, or that the other person is wrong. And this is one of the main reasons that I believe being open about what information you are supplying based on UPG is important for a reader or a listener to know. And so throughout this talk, I will try and make the distinction between kind of historical facts and my own UPG with the information that I share. So before we dive into the deities themselves, first a little bit about me. My name is Jess, and I am the author of a couple of books here at Moon Books. So I've got The Art of Lithomancy, which was released last year, and The Water Witch, which is an introduction to water witchcraft, which was released, that's so many witches, which was released just a couple of weeks ago, which is quite exciting. So some of the information that we'll go through today is touched upon in the Water Witchcraft book. You can also find out more generally about water witchcraft, working with water animal guides and spirits, divination. There's some spells and rituals and things you can try in the book. You can also visit my website, which is there, just www.thecottagemystic.com. As this year I've started offering one free course a month, which have been written and recorded by myself. This month's course is on Celtic river, spring and well deities, and last month's course is on the goddess SULIS, who I will cover briefly in this talk also. So if you're interested in finding out more about water deities, then head to the website and check those out. You can also see my Instagram handle there. I am quite active on Instagram, kind of posting updates and things. So yeah, just come and give me a follow and have a chat if you're interested. So we're going to dive into the deities now, and we will look at some of the deities associated with the sea. So the first deity we have is Nama, or Namu, a Mesopotamian deity of the primordial waters. So very little is known about this goddess, but she is one of the oldest Mesopotamian deities. I'm sorry, I'm absolutely awful at pronunciation, so you will have to bear with me as we go through this. But she's mainly known for her role in the creation of the universe and her importance in magic. She bears the title Mother Who Gave Birth to the Heavens and Earth, and her name written includes the sign for subterranean waters. And as I said, she's seen as a goddess of the primordial ocean. No husband or male deity is attested in connection with Nama, leading to the belief that she created the cosmos from this primordial ocean herself. In later Babylonian tradition, the goddess Tiamat takes over this role. But there are differences as to how these two goddesses are portrayed in literature. So Tiamat's exact associations are difficult to define, but she was, again, definitely a deification of the primordial seas. Most of what we know about her comes from the myth Enuma Elish. And in this myth, the salt sea Tiamat and the sweet sauter Azu mingle to create the gods. A battle takes place between the gods, and at first Tiamat attempts to appease Azu and stop the conflict. But she herself ends up becoming the main antagonist of the story, creating an army of monsters led by her new consort. She is ultimately defeated and her body split in two, creating heaven and earth from her body, the rivers from her eyes, mist from her spittle, mountains from her breasts, and so on. Throughout the epic, there are different descriptions of Tiamat. She appears both as a body of water, as a human figure. She's shown as having a tail. And these varying descriptions are ultimately reconciled as her limbs are turned into geographical features. In one of the only depictions of her, she is shown as having a woman's body and legs made of snakes. but it is worth noting that this is a kind of late Greek adoption of the Babylonian motif, and no kind of images from the time that she was worshipped have actually been positively identified as being that of Tiamat. So I personally have more of a connection to Nama than I do Tiamat, and I find that she is a great deity to work with when you want to do some deep inner reflection or find some inner peace. By connecting with her primordial ocean, we can experience just how vast the universe is and how everything is connected, and how we are a part of that connection. And a ritual bath to connect with this energy is one of my favorite types of ritual bath. So for this, it's very, very simple. All you will need is some sea salt, something that represents Nama. I have a hagstone that I found on a beach, which is just a stone with a natural hole in, which I've written her name on and draw some waves on, just very basic. I also burn some incense whilst I'm bathing, just to kind of help create the right environment. So run your bath and add the salt to the bath, stirring it in a clockwise direction, and place the hagstone somewhere where you can see it. Light your incense, and just take a moment whilst your bath is running to ground and center. So once the bath is run, get in, and as you bathe, meditate on Nama. Try and connect with her primordial waters and the waters inside of yourself. Feel this connection to yourself and to her and to the world around you, and note how it makes you feel, any thoughts or feelings or impressions that arise as you bathe. Remember, everyone's experience is different, so it isn't for me to tell you exactly what you should be experiencing. But for such a simple ritual, I do find it quite a profound experience. Cool. Okay, so moving on to our second deity. So Clienna. So Clienna is a complex character. She can be considered a member of the Irish Tuatha De Danann. Tuatha De Danann, sorry, again, pronunciation is absolutely awful. A fairy queen and the queen of the Banshees. So she was the daughter of the druid Manannán mac Lir and had a sister, Aivil. There are several tales associated with her. In one tale, she falls in love with a mortal man and leaves the land a promise to be with him. However, displeased with her leaving, she is taken by a wave caused by the music of a minstrel of Manannán mac Lir. And in one version of the tale, the wave brings her back to the land of promise where she remains forevermore. And in another version, she is drowned. She is strongly associated with County Cork. And in fact, the tide at Glandor in Cork is known as the Wave of Clienna, as it's believed that this is where she was drowned. My own personal impression of working with her is that she is more connected with the seashore than the sea itself. The seashore being symbolic of the space between kind of this physical world and the other world. However, I do still consider her a sea deity. In another tale, her and her sister both fell in love with the same man. However, he preferred Clienna's sister, so Clienna used her magics to sicken her sister and turn her into a white cat. So this man would instead choose Clienna. In her form as a fairy queen, it's said that she would abduct or try to seduce men and even drown them. As such, she can be associated with love, passion, and beauty. Clienna is also said to have had 3 birds who have the power of healing and could lull people into a healing sleep with their songs. So as such, she is also associated with healing. Whilst the exact meaning of her name is unknown, it could mean the territorial one, which points to her being a goddess of sovereignty. I also personally associate Clienna with creativity, and this is, again, complete UPG. There is nothing that I've come across in tales or folklore concerning her that points to her being associated with creativity. However, as cheesy as it sounds, she inspired me to write my first book, the Lithomancy book. And generally, I'm quite kind of a crafty person. I like jewelry making and paper crafts and things like that. It may be more her association with passion, and creativity is my passion. But for me personally, I find Clienna really helps me when I'm hitting a bit of a creator's block. So to connect with Clienna, I find that taking a walk along the beach and asking her to let you connect with her energy is a really good way of achieving this. If there's something particular that you need from her, such as healing or love, then focus on that, or feel free to just connect with her energy in general. As you walk, pick up any shells, pebbles, etc. that catch your eye, so long as these aren't being used or removing them would cause harm to the local ecosystem, and carry them with you as you walk. At the end of your walk, stop before the waves and take a moment to build a little offering to Cleanna, using the items that you found, and let her guide you as to what this should look like and how it should be formed. Once you have finished, take a moment to dedicate it to Cleanna and thank her for being with you today, and then just leave it for the tide to come in. So those are our 2 deities connected with the sea. So we're going to move on to a couple of river deities. The first one is Father Thames. So one of the most famous rivers in England is the River Thames. It runs through 9 different counties in England, although it is only the second longest river. The Thames has a rich history. It's been there since Roman times. It was built, the Romans built a huge town around London itself, which then kind of expanded over the years. And over centuries, castles and forts were built near the river, and it played a large part in trade and warfare. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the river would freeze over during winter and frost fairs would be held with the selling of food, there'd be musicians playing, and fairground amusements, amongst other things. So Father Thames was seen as the human manifestation and or guardian of the Thames. Very little is known around any ancient worship of him, but he has grown in popularity in modern times. And there are several statues and reliefs of Father Thames scattered around London. I actually came across one the other day. I was just walking the Thames path, and I think it was somewhere between Vauxhall and Battersea. Kind of this huge one showing Father Thames fighting a giant octopus with a dolphin, which was really, really bizarre. But yeah, they are kind of dotted around London if you keep your eyes open. He also has his own song. I'm just going to recite some of the lyrics to you. So there's some folks who always worry and some folks who never care. But in this world of rush and hurry, it matters neither here nor there. Be steady and realistic, don't hanker for gold or gems. Be carefree and optimistic, like old Father Thames. High in the hills, down in the dales, happy and fancy-free, old Father Thames keeps rolling along, down to the mighty sea. What does he know? What does he care? Nothing for you or me. Old Father Thames keeps rolling along, down to the mighty sea. He never seems to worry, doesn't care for fortune's fame. He never seems to hurry, but he gets there just the same. Kingdoms may come, kingdoms may go, whatever the end may be. Old Father Thames keeps rolling along, down to the mighty sea. The best way, a heaven-blessed way, just try to be always kind. It doesn't matter what the rest say, you're bound to leave them far behind. It's your job to do your duty, be faithful to all your friends, for England and home and beauty, like old Father Thames. And then some of the verses repeat themselves, but I won't make you sit here and listen to me recite that. So I work in London. I'm actually in the process of buying a flat on the River Thames, which is quite exciting. So Father Thames's energy is quite prominent in my life. And I do particularly feel him very strongly when I am kind of walking near the Thames. Again, a bit of UPG, but he feels very protective over the city and the people in it. And when you consider how the Thames has been used over the centuries, it has been a staple for trade and transport and is an important part of the city's heritage. So as well as protection, I associate him with a general connection to the local land and the city and the community. So I do have a prayer to Father Thames to ask for protection as I'm walking around London. As I walk the cobbled streets of the city, Father Thames, I call to thee. Protect me, keep me safe from harm, as I will it, so mote it be. Shine your light upon darkened streets and guide me on my journey. Protect me, keep me safe from harm, as I will it, so mote it be. The people march forever on, and danger's hard to see. So Father Thames, protect me, keep me safe from harm, as I will it, so mote it be. So we'll move on to our second river deity, and this is Sabrina. So the River Severn is the longest river in the UK. At 220 miles long, it travels from the Welsh mountains down into England, and it's home to a wealth of wildlife. In Welsh, the river is called Afon Hafren, and Hafren is the Welsh name of this goddess. In Latin, her name translates to Sabrina. Not much is known about the goddess Sabrina, but there are a couple of stories involving her that we can draw upon to give us more insight into this goddess. So the most well-known tale involving Sabrina is actually more centered around her father and his relationships. And we know of it from Geoffrey of Monmouth's influential History of the Kings of Britain, which was written around 1136. So her grandfather was Brutus, the leader of a band of Trojan exiles from Italy. They had settled in England with Brutus as their king, and when he passed after 24 years of rule, his lands were divided between his sons. His youngest son took what is now Scotland, his middle son took what is now Wales, and his eldest son took what is now England. And he became known as King Locrine of Liguria and is Sabrina's father. So King Locrine was engaged to Gwendolen, who was the daughter of the King of Cornwall, in what was seen as a marriage of diplomacy. However, King Locrine fell in love with another, and it was this love that would prove to be his and Sabrina's downfall. So during Locrine's reign, Britain was invaded by the Huns, led by their chief, Humber. Locrine led the fight against the Huns and beat Humber, who was drowned in a river, and Humber's daughter was taken prisoner. It was love at first sight, apparently, between Locrine and Humber's daughter, Estraldis, but Locrine had made his oath to Gwendolen and her father. And the King of Cornwall threatened Locrine with a battle axe, and Locrine knew that he had to keep his word and marry Gwendolen. But his love for Estraldis never faded, and he kept her near the palace, continuing his affair with her even through his marriage to Gwendolen. So Locrine had 2 children, a son named Madden with Gwendolen, and a daughter named Sabrina with Estraldis. Eventually, Gwendolen's father died, and Locrine saw his chance. He divorced Gwendolen and instead lived with Estraldis and his daughter Sabrina. So, filled with fury, Gwendolen raised a Cornish army against Locrine, and the king was eventually slain in battle. Gwendolen then took the throne of England for herself and for their son Madden, and she decreed that Estraldis and Sabrina be thrown into the river, and the river named after Sabrina, so that Locrine's infidelity would be remembered and bring shame to his name forever. There is another tale from Welsh mythology which involves Sabrina. So 3 sisters met to discuss the best way to get to the sea, as they greatly desired to meet the waters. These sisters were Sabrina, Wai, and Heidel. So Heidel took the shortest and most direct route and reached the sea near Aberystwyth. The second daughter, Wai, became so distracted with the beauty of the countryside that she wandered for miles before eventually reaching the sea. Sabrina, however, flew through the Welsh mountains and glided through the valleys before surging into the sea. And out of all of the sisters, she became most beautiful and peaceful, yet was often feared for being too powerful. The poet Milton writes of Sabrina, in which Sabrina rescues a lady because she is pure of heart. So there is a gentle nymph not far from hence, that with moist curb sways the smooth Severn stream. Sabrina is her name, a virgin pure, whom she was the daughter of Locrine, that had the sceptre from his father Brute, the guiltless damsel flying the mad pursuit of her enraged stepdame Gwendolen, commended her innocence to the flood that stayed her flight with his cross-flowing course. The water nymphs that in the bottom played held up their pearled wrists and took her in, and underwent a quick immortal change, made goddess of the river she still retains. Her maiden gentleness, and oft at eve, visits the herds along the twilight meadows. The clasping charm and Thor the numbing spell, if she be right invoked in warbled song, for maidenhood she loves and will be swift to aid a virgin such as was herself, In hard besetting need, this will I try, and add the power of summer during verse. So I personally, and again, going back into the UPG element, I have found that Sabrina is a great deity to work with when you need to practice compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love, no matter what you're going through. Sweet Sabrina is a name which suits this goddess, so call on her when you need to ground and balance and help yourself to appreciate and celebrate everything you have in your life, and walk your path with love and compassion in your heart for all, even for those who may have wronged you, which is definitely easier said than done. So the exercise for Sabrina is creating your own lip balm. And lip balm is not something I have ever thought of as using as an offering or a dedication, but it felt right with Sabrina. As I said, she represents compassion, sweetness, forgiveness, and unconditional love. And as well as keeping these feelings in our hearts, I think it's also important that we speak them. So lip balm felt like a great way of honoring Sabrina and what she stands for. So to make this lip balm, you will need a heat-proof glass bowl and a saucepan that the bowl will fit on top of. So we're going to be using what's called the double boiler method of heating our ingredients. If you haven't used that before, then give it a Google. It's fairly simple, but yeah, Google should be able to help you out there. You'll need some water. You'll need an olive base, and I tend to just use olive oil, which can be bought in most supermarkets. You'll also need a selection of flowers, and I highly recommend going for a walk and calling to Sabrina to guide you to what she wants you to include. I ended up going for some daisies, dandelions, and yarrow. Remember, you are putting this on your skin, so make sure you're choosing plants or flowers which are non-toxic and to wash them thoroughly. And if you aren't 100% sure as to what a particular plant or flower is or whether it's safe, then best to leave it well alone. You'll also need some beeswax pellets or bricks. I personally find pellets are much easier to use. An essential oil of your choice, something that evokes sweetness, such as orange or grapefruit, and a container to keep your salve in. So I'll just run through the instructions quickly. Again, this is going to be quite a quick talk through, but I do have instructions on how to make your own salves and balms and things on my website. So yeah, head there if you're interested in a bit more of an in-depth explanation as to how to create this particular balm. So first you'll need to infuse the flowers into the oil, and there's two ways of doing this. If you have the time and the patience, you can add them to a glass jar, pour the oil on top, and then leave it to sit in a warm or sunny place for about 4 weeks. If, like me, patience isn't your virtue, then you can use the double boiler method. Simply put the flowers in your bowl and pour in the oil. Ideally, you want the oil to just about cover your flowers, but whether you can achieve this depends on how much salve you want to make and how many flowers you have. And again, depending on the amount you are using, you'll want to leave this for between 20 minutes and an hour for the flowers to really infuse into the oil using the double boiler method. Whichever method you're going for, when it's complete, you'll need to strain the oil using a strainer or cheesecloth to remove the flowers from the mixture so only the oil remains. And again, just a reminder, if you are doing this straight after the double boiler method, then be careful because the bowl and the oil will be hot. So once you've strained your mixture, pour the oil back into the bowl, and we'll be using the double boiler method again to actually create the balm. As a general guidance, I would say use about 8 ounces of oil to 1 ounce of beeswax. I tend to make quite small batches, so I calculate everything down and then use a digital scale to measure everything out. So add the beeswax to the bowl with the oil and stir until the wax is melted and it's fully mixed in. This process doesn't take long, literally just a few minutes. And then you need to work quickly before the wax sets. So pour it into your chosen container. I tend to just use kind of small balm pots that I bought off of Amazon. So I pour the mixture into a small jug and then use this to pour the wax into the pots. And again, remember, everything will be hot. Once you've poured it into your container, add a few drops of your essential oil and just leave it to set. And that is it. That is how you create your own Sabrina lip balm. Cool. Okay, so I appreciate that I'm kind of charging through, but we've looked at a couple of deities of the sea. We've looked at a couple of deities of the rivers. So we're just going to finish up looking at a couple of deities that are associated with wells and healing springs. And our first one is SULIS. So again, like most of the deities that I've gone through so far, not too much is known about the goddess SULIS. Most scholarly accounts agree that she was a Celtic goddess, although reference to her has only been found in the English city of Bath, as far as I'm aware. As with all of these things, if anybody has any more information, then I would absolutely love to know. So please just kind of leave it in the comments, or as I said, visit the website, find me on Instagram, and just kind of give me a shout, because I like any excuse to talk about this sort of thing. So most of what we know about her comes from Roman sources. However, it is believed that she was worshipped in Bath before the arrival of the Romans. So coins from the Iron Age have been found at the site, which could potentially indicate that SULIS was worshipped there before the Romans, but there isn't really been enough of them found to draw a solid conclusion on that front. What I personally find quite interesting is that when the Romans came, many of the water goddesses were demoted to the status of nymph. However, SULIS was one of the only deities of this type that got to retain their goddess status, and was then conflated with a Roman goddess, becoming SULIS Minerva. This gives the impression that her cult must have already been quite large and influential before the Roman invasion. And it's also interesting to note that the majority of Latin inscriptions found refer solely to British deities as opposed to Roman deities. I think it's like 169 out of the 246 found. So the city of Bath was called Aqua Sulis, which literally translates as Water Sulis, and it became an important town in Romano-British culture. However, even in Roman sources, it's only named once, and so there is a huge gap of knowledge around SULIS and her cult. With Bath still being a major city in the UK, there's very little opportunity to do any further excavation work to see what else remains from that period that may help uncover more about this goddess. However, she is most known for her healing baths, which are a core feature of the city of Bath. And it's pretty much only from this temple that we have any kind of real historical insight as to who SULIS was and how she was worshipped. So whilst it is difficult to say for certain exactly who she was and what her functions were, we can make some pretty strong assumptions based on what we do know. So she was a goddess of the healing waters. The waters that flow beneath Bath were reputed to have healing powers, and the Romans would come from miles around to visit the springs to help heal various ailments. It was these waters that SULIS was associated with, and so one of her most important aspects was that of healing, specifically of those healing waters. There are 3 natural springs in the heart of the city, and their waters rise to the surface at a pretty consistent temperature of at least 45 degrees Celsius, which is quite unique in the UK, and can kind of help us understand why these waters specifically were held with such importance. So as well as bathing in it, the water was also drunk and came to be recognized as helping various ailments. These include rheums, lethargies, apoplexies, the scratch, inflammation of the fits, hectic flushes, pox, deafness, forgetfulness, shaking, and the weakness of any member. So we can see how through her association with these waters, one of the main attributes of SULIS was that of healing. SULIS was also believed to be a solar deity based on iconography from her temple and her name itself. However, there is some argument as to whether her name comes from the Proto-Celtic root suil, related to various Indo-European words for sun, or whether it comes from an old Irish word potentially meaning eye or sight. There was also found a pewter vessel dedicated to SULIS with a sun engraved on it, although this was the only offering found with such imagery. The heat of the springs and that being an important factor in their healing can also help us see how SULIS might be connected with the sun through that association of the heat there. And the sun is often associated with healing energies in general. But the truth is, while SULIS is often referred to as a solar goddess, again, it would be nice if there was a bit more kind of tangible historical evidence to back this up. I would say, based on my own experiences at the temple, that I absolutely feel a solar association through SULIS. She can also be seen as a goddess of justice. So, one of the interesting things about the Bath Temple was the number of cursed tablets that they found there. Roughly 130 of these cursed tablets were found dating to the Roman period. And all but one of them call on SULIS Minerva, with the other one referring to SULIS alone. And these cursed tablets were kind of small metal sheets inscribed with curses and then thrown into the spring. And you can kind of see them on display at the temple. Now, these weren't curses in the traditional sense, but more calls for retribution. So the majority of them were in relation to theft and follow roughly the same formula. The stolen property is transferred to the deity, in this case SULIS, so it then becomes the deity's loss. The culprit is named and sometimes the victim, and then the victim asks the deity to inflict the curse upon them if they don't return the stolen item. In that sense, SULIS could be seen as the shining light of justice, one who would grant retribution to those who had been wronged. This can seem in polar opposite to her role as a healing goddess and shows the dual nature of this goddess. And whilst it may seem difficult to reconcile the two, in my experience with SULIS, it works. Despite some of the graphic nature of the requests made to her in these cursed tablets, I've always kind of got the impression that hers is not vengeance, but justice which she delivers in a measured and balanced way. So as mentioned, SULIS is associated with healing and healing waters, and you can create your own healing waters. And that's kind of the exercise that I've got here for SULIS. You will need to wait for a sunny day and somewhere you can actively sit in the sun, which I appreciate is a bit of a rarity here in the UK, especially with the snow that we've been having recently. But hopefully it won't be too long until we get a bit of sunshine. So all you will need for this is a bowl of water and your own mind. It's also really useful to have an idea as to what the temple looked at. So you may just want to Google it because we are going to be visualizing ourselves sat at the temple. You may wish to add more items to help you focus, maybe some meditation music, any symbols of SULIS that you wish to use to help you connect with her, maybe even a picture of the temple itself. So close your eyes and go into meditation however you usually would. See yourself at the temple. You are sitting at the edge of the waters with the bowl in your hand. And take a moment to see the temple around you, the tall stone columns, the statues that line the upper level, and the waters in front of you. Take a moment to connect with the energy of SULIS. How does this feel to you? Place your hands in the water of the temple in front of you. It's warm, filled with healing energies that vibrate through your hands. Know that SULIS is here watching over her temple and watching over you. Goddess of the sun, bright and powerful. Her energy is calming and restorative. Just take another moment to connect with this energy and feel yourself under the watchful eye of SULIS. Pick up the bowl and place it into the pool and fill it with the water from the pool. And as you do this in kind of the physical world, take the bowl of water that you have in front of you and hold it between your hands. And just feel the energy of the water seeping through the bowl and into your hands. Feel its healing energies contained within the bowl, the power of SULIS for you to use however you choose. And when you feel ready, you can chant either externally or just kind of say it to yourself in your head. Hail SULIS. At your temple, I honor you. At your temple, I revere you. At your temple, I connect with you. Empower these waters with your healing energy to remove all illness and restore one to full health. Yours is the power of the sun and the power of the water, and I call unto you to bless this water with your brilliant healing light. So mote it be. You can use this water to water your plants or the earth to help it heal and grow. You can add it to healing teas and potions or ritual baths. You can use it as an offering or dedication to SULIS herself. You can offer it to ponds, rivers, lakes, etc., kind of as a general offering to the element of water by offering it healing. And you can also use it to cleanse other tools associated with healing, any crystals that you have, for example, or just generally in any other ritual or spell associated with healing. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I think we're pretty much on time. There's one more deity that I want to discuss, and that is Coventina. So Coventina was a Romano-British goddess of wells and springs. There are several references to her, including near the Carabruff Spring along Hadrian's Wall in England. However, like with most of the deities, she is one which little is actually known about. Votive candles and other dedications were found in a walled area of the spring, which is now referred to as Coventina's Spring. These include over 13,000 coins, the head of a male statue, a relief depicting 3 water nymphs, 2 slabs dedicated to the goddess Coventina, 10 altars to Coventina and Minerva, and 2 clay incense burners. And at least 10 inscriptions to her were also found at Carabruff. She is often depicted as a water spirit, partially clothed and reclining on the water atop of water lilies. In the year 391 AD, the Emperor Theodosius I demanded that all shrines to the old deities were to be destroyed. But there is evidence that worshippers tried to protect her shrine by surrounding it with stones and rock. The main attributes associated with Coventina, and again, I kind of get the impression reading and researching that this is mostly from UPG, but her main associations are abundance, prophecy, the cycles of life and death, birth, renewal, etc., purification, new beginnings, inspiration, innocence, integrity, and honesty. Some also associate her with healing. And again, whilst there's little historical evidence for this connection, considering that wells and springs were often revered for their healing powers and she's associated with this particular spring, it's not really too much of a stretch to assume that she was associated with healing. So I think, as I mentioned before, one of my favorite types of workings are ritual baths. Unfortunately, my house at the minute does only have a shower. It's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to moving into my new place. So I have been using salt scrubs in the shower instead of as a bit of a replacement for ritual baths. So with Coventina being associated with purification and renewal, I thought I would create a salt scrub recipe dedicated to Coventina, and that will be our practical exercise for this deity. So again, it's really very simple. All you'll need is some sea salt, or you can use sugar if you have sensitive skin. I prefer sea salt because of the association with the element of water there. Some dried rosemary, some dried marjoram, some dried sage, and some dried rose petals. You will also need a little bit of oil to bind the mixture. You can choose an essential oil such as rose, rosemary, or lavender, or just use olive oil. So place all of these in a bowl and mix it all together in a clockwise direction. And as you do, focus on Coventina and her properties of purification and renewal, and feel that energy being poured into the bath salts. When you feel ready, you can chant, "Hail to Coventina, goddess of the waters, of purification and renewal. Please bless these salts with your power, cleanse my body and spirit, and rejuvenate my mind and soul. Coventina, I ask of you, imbue these salts with your energy, so mote it be." And that's it. Just store them somewhere safe. I usually go for glass containers. And when you use them in the shower, envision Coventina washing away any negativity and revitalizing your being. You may also wish to recite the chant again as you go. And that is it. Cool. We got some comments. Dorothy, my UPG interaction with SULIS was one of merciful justice, an unforgettable moment. So glad you included her. I'm glad that, someone else has also picked up on that. Is there any relationship between Vienna and Manon MacLear? Yes. So in some tales and kind of doing a bit of research, she is sometimes described as an adoptive daughter of his. He had a lot of children in general, some of them kind of biological, some of them just adopted. She was the daughter of his druid, so you can see that there is quite a close connection there. In general, kind of more of the connections are they existed within the same spheres and kind of appear in some of the same tales. So in terms of a family kind of connection. It is potential, as I said, someone kind of stated that she may have taken on a role as an adopted daughter to Manonon, but yeah, it's generally seen that she was the daughter of his druid. My sacred water is the Man and Bracken Canal. Hello, Hannah. Is there a deity you'd recommend connecting with that's associated with canals? That's a very interesting question. There are a few deities that you could work. I mean, Sabrina, for example, that we went through. So the 7, it has lots of kind of canals associated with it. That's an absolutely beautiful to kind of go up and have a walk along there if you can. In terms of the Mon and Bracken Canal, I don't know any specifically off the top of my head, but I'm definitely going to have a look at that because that's very interesting. But yeah, a lot of the kind of river deities that are associated with rivers here in the UK, especially kind of the rivers that run through some of the main cities and towns, can also be associated with canals as well. So yeah, sorry, that's not the most helpful answer, but I hope that helps a little bit. Cool. Okay, so I think we're about a minute over. Thanks very much, everyone. Really enjoyed it. I think it's my second MoonCon. As I said, just feel free to kind of find me on my website or Instagram. Anything you want to chat about after this, any questions, please just give me a shout. Always happy to help, and hopefully I will see you all soon. Thanks very much.